Well, hi ho folks, and welcome back to the adventures of Turwinkle, the gnome mage. Well, hi Turwinkle.
Salutation.
Are you all set for tonight?
Indubitably.
Well, great, because tonight we are going to be talking with Kairos of the Dark Sun Guardians, and we are going to find out all about his role play, a little bit about him, and maybe some advice for you new role players out there. And so without further ado, let us go put on our Sluffy disguise and sit down and talk with Kairos of the Dark Sun Guardians. Alrighty folks, as you can see, we made it safe and sound here to Eversong Woods with our wonderful Sluffy disguise on. And right behind us in this beautiful setting, we have a Kairos. Hello, sir.
How you doing?
Great. It is so great to have the opportunity to sit down with you tonight and find out all about your roleplay, a little bit about you, and get some advice for those other role players out there. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Great to see you again.
You bet. And so I guess with that, folks, we are going to sit down and we're going to start this wonderful conversation with Kairos about his fantastic role play here in Eversong Woods, part of the Dark Sun Guardians and the Thalassian Hospital. This is going to be great. So with that, folks, we'll be right back as we begin our discussion with Kairos of the Dark Sun Guardians. Alrighty folks, and we are back. And so Kairos the Undying on the Wormrest Accord server, he is the guild leader of the Dark Sun Guardians. He's a level 100 Blood Elf Paladin, and of course over here on the Horde side. And so, sir, first and foremost, why did you choose a Blood Elf to roleplay?
Particularly on the Wormrest server, I've noticed this across a lot of servers, is the Blood Elves tend to have the biggest following for roleplay, and I just wanted to be able to have the most access to the roleplay environment. In fact, I wasn't a big fan of elves at all, but it's grown on me lately, so I tend to stick to it, and I like it.
And the name Kairos, how did you come up with that? Was that from maybe a book or a movie, or was it just something you came up with on your own?
Besides the fact that I just love the way it sounds, and I love like the sounds of words, it has some significance in it. It's a word from theology, or it founded in theology. So there's a religious reference right there for a paladin, but it kind of means like loosely a good moment to make a decision. So it kind of symbolizes what I'd like to think is Kairos' character.
Oh, okay. Well, wonderful. And so, do you use that name on any other tunes?
He's the only one, just Kairos. This is the exclusive Kairos, and I have it as like my out of character tags for alternative games.
All right. And I guess the next question is, how long have you been role-playing him?
I have had this character in particular, not necessarily on this server, for probably about 7 years.
Oh, wow. Well, awesome. And so, when did you first start? Was that must have been BC?
Right about, yep. That's when I started getting into the roleplay scene very loosely, but if not a little bit, no, yeah, right about that.
Okay. And so, have you always just roleplayed this character, or did you start with another tune?
This was actually my first roleplay character.
Wow. Okay. And so, before you started role-playing in WoW, had you role-played in any other game, tabletop or otherwise?
I had not. I'd done a lot of creative writing, but that's it.
Oh, okay. And so what made you decide to role-play in WoW?
In truth, I think my first experience in roleplay was similar to a lot of other people's, as in they were not involved. I happened to be walking by some people, saw them acting out their characters, and I sent them a message. I said, "What are you doing?" At first, I was a little taken back by it, because I'm like, "Oh man, that's weird." And then I started reading, I'm like, "Oh man, that's amazing."
Right. I think a lot of folks, that is kind of their initial foray into roleplay, is they'll just be doing their PvE stuff, and they'll come across people that are role-playing. And the exact same thing happened with me. You know, I just happened to be going up to Stormwind and had all these paladins going by in formation on their steeds, and role-playing the whole time, and you're just like, wow, how do I get involved with that? And
Yep.
it's such a neat thing to get involved in, and so great. And so never played Dungeons or Dragons or anything like that before.
I have played Dungeons and Dragons, but we just were very rule oriented. Didn't RP the characters at all. Just roll, make your moves. It was pretty boring. We were pretty boring.
Okay. All right, folks. When we come back, we are going to find out what the story is behind Kairos, and so we're going to find out all. So we are going to find out all about that. So we'll be right back with that. Alrighty, folks, and we are back. And so, Kairos, what is your backstory for your character here?
Well, Kairos starts off like a lot of blood elves. He comes from a noble family, the Sunseekers, and his parents were very much so socialites, kind of pushed having children away, forced it on nannies, that sort of thing. Um, and when he started to find himself and discover what he wanted to do, he rather quickly realized that he had a natural affinity for the light. And it caused him to have some strange occurrences, just regarding, you know, feeling the presence, I should say, is a good way to put it. He being able to heal quickly, that sort of thing. But he wanted to reject that idea altogether. He felt it coming on, didn't want to embrace it, so he actually did the antithesis of the light, and that was to start trying to delve into shadows. And so he was actually, in his early life, a rogue character, and actually I played him icily as a rogue who had struggles with religion, I guess would be what you would call it, with the light, or his powers. And when he realized he was terrible at being a rogue because he just can't, he finally started to embrace the light. And this wasn't even a turning point for him, because he says, well, if I'm going to have to use the light, I'm going to use it for what I want. So he was a very retribution-based paladin, and he used his powers for vengeance, which are a lot of paladins do that. A lot of warriors that use the light. And his first involvement really dealing with the light was with a group known as the Sun Shatter Protectorate. And this is just a backstory I made up. It would have been fun RP in my opinion, but it was led by Captain Sun Shatter, and they basically just went across Azeroth and pillaged places that were infested with fell energy or shadow or cults, and they were just merciless. And after a long time, they had power struggles within the Protectorate and dispersed after a bloody fallout. And it was around this time that Kairos realized, what am I doing? Looking back at all of the bloodshed he'd done, and it was just one of those realizations that he attributes to being a blessing, having realized the realization being a blessing. So he made a drastic turnaround in his life, decided, I'm going to do well for people, I'm going to have a family and live a life, and despite all of these demons. And that's when he met his wife, and his wife is Jasara. And again, this is all just a part of his backstory. Unfortunately, I didn't RP most of this because it's an extensive history that I've dated, in 100 or so years time span. And so they fall in love. They have this great life. He's doing well. He's starting to learn light mending, and they find out, we're with child. So Jasara and him, great, we're going to have a child, great for the Sindorai, all that. And, time passes, and they're going through the tribulations of having a child, and the time comes for them to give birth, and there are complications. And they can't explain it. It's just one of those arbitrary circumstances, and they lose the baby. And in doing so, his wife actually dies giving birth. So instead of really hating himself, which he did, he took it as this is the light telling me that I can't just get off scot-free. This is my penance. I have to live the rest of my life with what I've done before this. This is what the light is doing for me, because he becomes very devout, very invested in the light, and eventually, takes away to isolation, like a lot of paladins have done. A lot of paladins that feel that they don't deserve the light's blessing, and that's actually in the teachings of the light. He went to Icecrown, and he decided to, protect people there, start investing his time into learning, as well as bolstering his ability with the light, but never really expecting to do much with it. So, but after realizing that he wasn't going to do well by anybody just by being in Icecrown, he decided to venture back into Silvermoon and start his life there. And then there's a lot of roleplay from that point.
Well, that is awesome. So how long did that take you to come up with, that backstory?
I don't know if this is a bad thing or a good thing, but I honestly came up with that whole story in about a day.
Wow. Okay. So you really just had kind of a almost an epiphany on what his backstory was. Is that correct then?
Yeah, absolutely. I just sat down, and I love writing anyway, so I started creating the story of my character and just kept going and going, and I'm like, oh, I should probably get lunch. Oh, wait, it's past dinner time.
All right. Well, awesome. So, folks, when we come back, we're going to talk about what happens when you take a look at Kairos's MRP, or is it TRP, sir?
Yeah, he's TRP3.
Oh, okay. So, what you would see when you look at his TRP3. So, we'll be right back with that. All right, folks, and we are back. And so TRP3 time. So first and foremost, why have you chosen TRP3 instead of MRP? What do you enjoy about that more?
I actually had been using MRP for a long time. That's what I started with. I thought it was tried and true, and I switched over to TRP3. I just think it's really pretty. It's a great add-on. It's at first I was a little overwhelmed because there's so many options, but since I've been evolving in roleplay, I'm just like, I kind of like having all of those options. It makes it a little more immersive. It's fun.
Well, great. And so if I were somebody that was kind of scanning through the crowd and I came upon your TRP3 and I was looking at what your description of Kairos is, what would it read?
Well, I have two descriptions, and they're pretty simple. I don't like to get too wordy, just so people aren't sitting there reading a book about what is right before them. But it would be as follows for his physical description. His chiseled jawline gives way to a flawless smile that warms hearts. A smooth, deep voice is housed within his muscular, tall frame that holds him together quite handsomely. He frequently keeps his armor immaculate, finding it very important to set a good example for all. And commonly sporting a cheery smile, Kairos is very approachable, the embodiment of charisma.
Oh, well, wonderful. That is awesome. Now, do you go into descriptions about, say, pets or weaponry or anything like of that nature?
There are two things that I really get into descriptively for Kairos besides his physical description. One would be a weapon, and that is, at a first glance, which is an option you can use in TRP3, is his weapon. And a lot of paladins, even Death Knights, like to really name their weapon. Like, this is Frostmourne, this is, Endbringer.
Right.
And Kairos, he has Hopebringer, and it's actually a weapon that was commissioned in game by Azurian as a gift, and it has a nice little etching in it. It says, "Your very light makes the shadows hide, the light that breaks the curse of pride, the light that takes the weary in its arms." And it's signed AA from Azurian Abadania. And people can read that description there for his sword only because it's something that kind of defines him and a lot of paladins.
Oh, wonderful. And what was the other thing that people can delve into?
It goes hand in hand with his physical description. It's his personality traits. I try to play Kairos as a very light character, very approachable, because out of character, I love promoting the community. So I put a lot of things in, very approachable, all of these sorts of things, friendly. And for personality traits, it's another description just as long. It just says, as if a living beacon, Kairos exudes a particular charm that is contagious. In truth, as many would attest, few would contest his goodness. Of all the positive qualities harbored within the man, a few shine as brightly as the light he wields, honest, confident, and just. It is without a doubt that Kairos would help most anyone, though he does tend to be wary of people that are actively shady. So, as to show that he doesn't really get too much into the darker themes, dark role plays, things that might be questionable for a lot of writers.
Oh, wonderful. That is awesome. And I love the fact that he has more of a positive impact on the community rather than the dark, kind of scary role play. We need those role players as well.
Right.
But, it's always nice to kind of come across those that are doing things to uplift rather than tear down. And I always enjoy those a little bit better myself.
Absolutely.
So with that, folks, when we come back, we're going to talk about Kairos's roleplay style and find out what he prefers as a role player. So we'll be right back with that. Alrighty, folks, and we are back. And so, Kairos, what would you consider your roleplay style to be? Are you a light, medium, heavy role player? Are you a multi-paragrapher? Are you more of a reactionary type role player? What kind of role play is your style?
I normally, if I'm not doing something that's obvious out of character, I would consider myself a heavy role player. I do anything reaction based, so I can do paragraph if that's how people are doing their role play at the time, or I can do snippets if people are doing short bits. It's no matter to me. Thankfully I started role playing and I was just started learning on my own, and I'm very adaptive.
Well, what was the hardest thing for you to learn when you started role playing in WoW?
Present tense or past tense?
Yeah. Well, we're always learning, aren't we? But I guess when you first started.
I guess it was the mechanics of it. Nothing to me was that challenging, but kind of figuring out how to not say just Kairos says, Kairos walks. So really exploring other great words to use in the role play to make it a little more elegant to read, I guess, would be the hardest part to start, because it's all happening in live time. So you're just like, oh, I got to think of these words on the fly. So you normally can't be that elaborate, so you don't keep people waiting.
All right. And what kind of combat system do you use with Kairos? Are you
I
more of a D20 type guy, or do you like to emote your combat?
just like before, I am very adaptive. I happen to be a PvPer, so I love dueling, if that's what people want to do. I love writing out fight scenes, and I am very accustomed to D20. So,
All right. Well, excellent. And as far as romance RP, is Kairos involved with anyone at the moment, or?
Kairos is involved with somebody.
Oh,
It's a little hospital romance.
okay. And I guess if you would like to share with the folks who that might be.
um, it actually is a Jurian, and she happened to be the director, and he really wanted to work up being in the hospital because he had a bit of a crush on her, and it worked out really well. It actually made an awesome role play.
Oh, wonderful. And so, do we have you proposed yet? Is there a wedding in the
no.
future? No, nothing yet. Okay.
It's ironically, it's a good, slow-paced progression of their relationship, and it's really fun.
Oh, okay. So slowly tearing down those walls.
Right, slowly shackling Kairos.
Okay. Well, excellent. Excellent. All right, folks. So when we come back, we're going to find out a little bit about Kairos in real life and find out what he likes to do outside of the game. So we'll be right back with that. Alrighty, folks, and we are back. And so, Kairos, We are at the point where we find out a little bit about you. The reason why we get into this is so that we can kind of break those stereotypes of what a role player is in real life. They're not all 40-year-olds living in their mom and dad's basement eating Cheetos all day, but there are people that come from all different backgrounds in life and who enjoy doing all sorts of different things. So, what do you like to do outside the game?
Well, first of all, I am a 23-year-old. I am from the Midwest, and I'm a little unconventional. I happen to love writing. First of all, that's one of my bigger hobbies. I sing. I'm an instrumentalist, particularly with piano. But most importantly, I am avidly involved in charity.
Oh,
I think that charity is extremely important. I participate in the March of Dimes, which is to promote research for preventing infant mortality and premature babies. I am in the Big Brother Big Sister program, and I particularly tend to children with special needs. And I have also been very active in cancer walks, particularly with breast cancer.
oh, well, fantastic. And, especially with the March of Dimes, which helped me as a child because I was born a month premature. And back in the 70s, boy, that was really
Mm-hmm.
a hard thing because the technology really wasn't there. And so I've always supported March of Dimes, and that's always been one of the big charities that I have rallied behind. So that is wonderful to hear, sir. And
Absolutely.
going a little further back, you're writing, sir. How long have you been writing?
I've been writing since I was a child. I had been working since I was about 14. I come from an Italian background. It was just important that everybody works. And so I did a lot with my family. I still operate a business with my family. I co-work with them. And in particular, if anybody's curious, I am a professional painter by trade, particularly with residential, industrial, and commercial properties. I also am just a handyman. I am a very typical Italian man. I can fix your toilet, and I can make you great spaghetti.
All right,
So,
great. Now, sir, do you find that your writing helps your role play, or is it the other way around? Your role play helps your writing?
honestly, I would have to say that my role play, as of late in particular, has been helping my writing. The the ability to be able to think on the fly and be immersed and have the interactions, especially with people that you want to have the interactions with, just creates a whole opportunity that you didn't think of originally. So you'll be RPing with somebody and you're trying to think of a character perspective for your own story, but it's harder because you are all of the characters in your own story. But when you get to see the perspective from somebody else and their writing style, it's like, oh my God, that it makes perfect sense. I can totally see this character of my story like that character.
Oh, great. And do you have any novels in the works, sir?
I I'm very slow in the publishing process. I have only an academic piece published through a journal. It was discussing language hybridity regarding a theology paper. And but yes, I am working on 4 novels, 2 of which are well beyond novel length, and they need a ton of editing, and I'm not looking forward to it.
Oh, well, awesome. So I can't wait to hear when your first book comes out, sir. I can't wait to see it.
Ironically, since you bring that up, I'm having a meeting with a publisher on Saturday, next Saturday, and it's a children's book.
Oh, well, great, sir. So, folks, keep an eye out. If something happens, which we will keep our fingers crossed, if something happens, we'll definitely be promoting it here on the show. So, excellent. And so, folks, when we come back, we're going to get some advice from Kairos to you new role players out there, and maybe to you veterans as well. So, we'll be right back with that. Alrighty, folks, and we are back. And so, Kairos, what advice would you give to somebody that's wanting to start role-playing in WoW?
I have a lot of advice to give new role players, but firstly, I just want to say that we would probably have to extend this interview to new lengths for me to put it all in. So some of the important things I'd like to hit on were actually some things that were discussed in one of the great podcast interviews, and that was about player safety and health. And it's really important when you start role playing that you don't feel the need to settle. And I mean that for a lot of situations. Sometimes people, when they first decide, oh, I want to start role playing, they will try to get in with the crowd that they happen to see first when they first started getting interested in role play. And sometimes that's not the best thing, because there are a lot of dark themes out there. There are a lot of people who maybe will write things that you're really uncomfortable with. And when that's your first role play experience, some people might get the misconception that that is what role play is. And that is absolutely false. There are a lot of different role plays out there. If you like to write dark stuff, that's great. It's out there. If you like to write happy stuff or light stuff, things that aren't graphic, that's out there too. So it is pivotal that you don't feel as a new role player that you are being sucked into something that you don't want to be a part of. I know, for example, one thing, I had that happen to me, actually. It was my first time seeing roleplay, and it was, really graphic. I'm like, oh, that's awesome, and it's fun. And I started really reading. I'm like, oh, this is really graphic. And, that just isn't my style. That's not my style. So I think, firstly, never feel pressured into doing role plays that you don't want to do.
All right, excellent. And if you're talking to a veteran role player, what advice would you give them?
I'd like to, at this point, to think myself as a veteran role player, and it's what I always am guilty of. It's always be open-minded. And I know I struggle with this at times. Be willing to not necessarily appreciate, but respect somebody's style of role play. It may not go with yours. You may not find it appealing, but it's somebody expressing their creativity in a medium that makes them happy, or at least a way that they are trying to be happy. So, just don't be judgmental, and always be willing to give a hand to somebody who may be struggling or maybe in a bad place.
All right, that is some great advice. Yeah, again, what I love about that is what it does is it makes the community stronger, because we're not separating those new folks off, or maybe even those older role players off onto their own cliques, but you're incorporating some of those different styles, and maybe you might find something that you really enjoy out of those different styles that you come across. So that is some great advice. Wonderful, sir.
Thank you.
Alrighty, folks, when we come back, we are going to give some shout outs to some folks out there. And so with that, we'll be right back. Alrighty, folks, and we are back. And so, Kairos, who would you like to give a shout out to this evening?
I would firstly, and most cliche of me, love to give a shout out to Azurian. You are a wonderful lady. I love you with all my heart. You are absolutely wonderful writer. And second, of course, my guild, the Dark Sun Guardians, and all of the staff at the Vlasian Hospital. I'd like to give another shout out to the entire Wormrest community. You guys are fantastic, and I hope that we can start growing together and being better writers for it. And lastly, and maybe a little more unconventionally, I'd like to give a shout out to the March of Dimes and remind everybody that if you know anybody who's ever suffered the tribulations of having a premature baby, that they are unmatched. And if you yourself were born and had the polio vaccination, for example, that you are a March of Dimes baby. And I believe most of us have. So just take a moment, get out there, do something charitable. It's really healthy, and you're going to feel really great for doing it.
Oh, well, that is wonderful. And let me again say kudos to all of that, both Zirian, especially the Dark Sun Guardians as well. If you folks haven't seen that episode, do take a look on the channel at that wonderful guild. They are a lot of fun and a fantastic guild. So if you're looking for a guild to join, Kairos here runs that guild, and he does so very well. And it is a lot of fun. And it's a unique guild with some great role play themes behind it. So check that out as well. So excellent, sir. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us tonight.
It was immeasurably enjoyable. Thank you so much, Turwinkle.
You bet. And so, folks, with that, we're going to head back to the Light Hopes Chapel with our final thoughts on this wonderful role play, Kairos of the Dark Sun Guardians. So we'll be right back with that. Alrighty, folks, and we made it safe and sound back to Light Hopes Chapel. So, Turwinkle, let's give Kairos a wonderful thank you, sir, for taking the time to speak with us tonight.
Allow me to express my deepest thanks.
Certainly, and we really had a great time talking with him tonight, didn't we?
Indubitably.
You bet. And so, folks, if you like this episode, click that like button. If you'd like to comment on this episode or on any of our previous episodes, please do so below. Let us know what you liked and let us know what you didn't. And finally, if you'd like to subscribe, well, we would love to have you. So just hit those subscription buttons today. So, Turwinkle, excellent job as always, sir. And Turwinkle, we will see you next time.
I'll miss you.
We'll miss you too, Turwinkle. Bye-bye.